No summons to Islam had yet been made in public, but there was an ever-increasing group of devout believers and intense worshippers, both men and women, most of them young. Amongst the first to come, apart from those already mentioned, were the Prophet's cousins, JAFAR and ZUBAIR. Then came other cousins, his and theirs, the sons of their aunt UMAIMAH, ABDULLAH ibn JASH, and his brother UBAIDULLAH, and the son of their aunt Bara, Abu Salamah. There were also 2 cousins on his mother's side, SAAD, the son of Abu WAQAS of Zurah, and his younger brother UMAIR. But not one of the Prophet's 4 uncles showed any inclination to follow him. Abu Talib made no objection to the Islam of his 2 sons, Jafar and Ali, but for himself he said he was not prepared to forsake the religion of his forefathers. Abbas was evasive, and Hamza uncomprehending, though both assured him of their unfailing affection for him personally. But Abu Lahab showed plainly his conviction that his nephew was self-deceived, if not a deceiver. In these early days of Islam, the companions of the Prophet would often go out together in groups to the glens outside Mecca, where they could pray the ritual prayer together without being seen. But one day a number of idolaters came upon them while they were praying, and rudely interrupted them with ridicule. Finally they came to blows, and Sa'd of Zuhrah struck one of the disbelievers with the jawbone of a camel and wounded him. This was the first bloodshed in Islam. But after that they decided to refrain from violence until God should decide otherwise, for the revelation continually enjoined patience upon the Prophet, and therefore upon them. Bear with patience what they say, and part from them with a courteous farewell. And also, deal gently with the disbelievers, give them respite for a while. This case of violence had been something of an exception on both sides, for Quraysh as a whole were disposed to tolerate the new religion, even after the Prophet had openly proclaimed it, until they saw that it was directed against their gods, their principles, and their inveterate practices. They consulted together in an attempt to form a common policy about the cause of their trouble. The situation was exceedingly grave. The time of the pilgrimage would soon be upon them, and Arabs would come to Mecca from all over Arabia. They, Quraysh, had a high reputation for hospitality, not only as regards food and drink, but also because they made every man welcome, both him and his gods. But this year pilgrims would hear their gods insulted by Muhammad and his followers, and they would be urged to forsake the religion of their forefathers and to adopt a new religion, which appeared to have numerous disadvantages. No doubt many of them would not come to Mecca again, which would not only be bad for trade, but would also diminish the honor in which the guardians of the sanctuary were now held. At the worst, the Arabs might league together to drive them out of Mecca and to establish another tribe or group of tribes in their place. It was therefore imperative that the visiting Arabs should be told that Muhammad in no way represented Quraysh. They decided that outside the town all the roads by which Mecca was approached must be manned, and that visitors must be warned in advance to be on their guard against Muhammad, for they knew from their own experience how winning he could be. Had he not been, before he began preaching, one of the best-loved men in Mecca? Nor had his tongue lost any of its eloquence, nor his presence anything of its compelling majesty. They carried out their plans with zeal and thoroughness. TUFAIL, a man of Daus, an outlying western tribe, told afterwards how he had been warned on his arrival in Mecca against speaking to the sorcerer Muhammad, or even listening to him, lest he should find himself separated from his people. TUFAIL was a poet and a man of considerable standing in his tribe. Quraysh were therefore especially insistent in their warning, and they made him so afraid of being bewitched that before going into the mosque he stuffed his ears with cotton wool. The Prophet was there, having just taken up his stance for prayer between the Yemeni corner and the Black Stone, as was his wont, facing towards Jerusalem, with the southeast wall of the Kaaba immediately in front of him. His recitation of Quranic verses was not very loud, but some of it nonetheless penetrated TUFAIL's ears. "God would not have it," he said, "but that he should make me hear something of what was recited, and I heard beautiful words. So I said to myself, I am a man of insight, a poet, and not ignorant of the difference between the fair and the foul. Why then should I not hear what this man is saying? If it be fair, I will accept it, and if foul, reject it." I stayed until the Prophet went away, whereupon I followed him, and when he entered his house, I entered it upon his heels, and said, "O Muhammad, thy people told me this and that, and they so frightened me about thy state, that I stuffed mine ears, lest I should hear thy speech. But God would not have it, but that he should make me hear thee. So tell me thou the truth of what thou art." The Prophet explained Islam to him, and recited the Quran, and TUFAIL made his profession of faith. Then he returned to his people, determined to convert them. His father and his wife followed him into Islam, but the rest of Daus held back, and he returned to Mecca in great disappointment and anger, demanding that the Prophet should put a curse on them. But instead the Prophet prayed for their guidance, and said to TUFAIL, "Return to thy people, call them to Islam, and deal gently with them." These instructions he faithfully followed, and as the years passed, more and more families of Daus were converted. Before meeting the Prophet, TUFAIL had only met his enemies, but other pilgrims met also his followers, who told them a story very different from what the enemies told them, and each believed what his nature prompted him to believe. As a result, the new religion was spoken of, well or ill, throughout all Arabia. But nowhere was it more a theme of talk than in the oasis of Yathrib.